I can hear you. It should be fine.
Okay. Greetings, everyone. It's Trey Jadlow here. I'm here on this 15th day of October 2020. Here with my new friend, Jonathan Watkins, whom I met on a Facebook page. He's an atheist. We met him on the Secular Student Alliance. Is that where we met?
Yes. Yeah.
All right. I belong to a couple of those friendly atheists and a couple other ones too as well. So I get mixed up where I'm at. Anyway, so they I put a post up. Actually, let me see if I can bring it up.
Sure.
Yeah, there's a post that was up said, it actually has the thumbnail picture that I have for this video. You know what? Before we get started, actually, I forgot. Let me do some introductions here. Would you mind telling me a little bit about yourself? Like, I don't know. I mean, anything interests what you do for a living, thing like that. And then I always like to find out what people, where they're at with their religious conviction or their atheism, and what kind of atheism you hold to. Just a little bit of information, and I'll tell you a little bit about me and my background.
Yeah, no problem. So these questions are always so hard to answer because it's describe the content of your life, you know. Currently working in college. Yeah. Currently working in college, working towards a dual major with philosophical literature and political science, which is some of the big things. Right now I work for Verizon. That's my main kind of mode of things. I'm engaged, so that's quite fun. Recently just got our own place all set up with an extra room for an office for me. So things have been quite successful, and I'm quite proud of it. I'm quite proud of that. When it relates to, describe my personal beliefs with atheism is what you requested?
Yeah, or like, I'm always curious how people were raised. Did you have like a religious upbringing, secular, and then kind of how did you get to where you're at today?
The most I ever heard about religious related topics from my parents were that they may believe in God, and that's the only thing they've ever told me. So when I was growing up, my exposure to it was taking a lot of intro to religious classes, because I was personally very interested, and I'm still very interested about the questions of how the universe is the way that it is, and why the way it is the way that it is, and why people have consciousness, and the big questions that I'm sure we're all interested in. But when it came to religion, I never really got into one thing. My brand of, strange way to put it, but my brand of atheism is a lot different, I feel, than most common branches. Because a lot of people who describe themselves as atheists say that they're actually anti-theists, and they make the absurd claim that God doesn't exist, which is unprovable. You can't claim that. But in my view, I believe in a God by a definition that is completely different than I hear most theists argue for a God. Basically the idea of a God being the physical culmination of information in the universe, in the observable universe, the same way that neurons fire in our brain and we look at ourselves as a single unit. I see the universe and its information transfer as a single unit being a definition of a God, but that type of consciousness is unfathomable to humankind. So I couldn't describe it. And in many religions, they tell you that trying to describe the mind of God is a futile experience for a human anyway. So that's kind of where I'm at. I don't hear very many people explaining it that way when they say that they believe in a God. I see that God is completely indifferent to us, only because it's like being a being of unfathomable consciousness. We couldn't even fathom what it is, or if it's even self-aware of itself. Sorry for all the long explanation when you asked for a short introduction.
No, I appreciate it. I mean, whatever it takes to express yourself and your view, it's very interesting to me.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's the gist of that. Was there another question that you had asked?
No, that's it. That's fine.
Okay.
It's good enough.
All right.
I'm a born again Christian. I'm a Reformed Baptist as my denominational persuasion, and I've been a Christian about 34 years now, almost 34 years. I live in the Kansas City area. I'm a dental lab technician. I make teeth for a living, dental prosthetics. I'm self-employed.
Very nice.
Thanks. And
Very nice.
I've got 6 kids. Sadly, I'm divorced, but I've got 6 kids. They're almost all grown. My youngest is 17. Oldest is 30.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, we're going through family planning too on our end. So It's a great thing.
Oh, having kids is wonderful. It's a lot of work, very difficult, but when they grow up,
I hear.
Plan. So yeah, it's wonderful. So I enjoy thinking about things like metaphysics and ultimate issues and things regarding with Christianity, because I think Christianity is the best explanation for the reality that we know. And so I enjoy engaging with people about it, and I like getting people to engage with me on online and social media and stuff like that. So anyway, yeah, that's where I'm at. And then I guess we can just jump in.
Sure.
All right. So I had posted the picture on the thumbnail for this thing. I grabbed it from the Secular Student Alliance a post which said millennial and Generation Z voters now far outnumber the boomers, and then a woman's holding it says our time is now. And it says young Americans can change the course of history. In November, vote. A challenge to vote. And my first comment was, LOL, Secular Student Alliance, notice how the rise of, quote, your time just happens to coincide with the disintegration of the West. Hashtag circumspection, hashtag the more you think about it. And you replied saying the disintegration of your idea of the West, nuclear families and conservative values, religion and storytelling over facts, unprecedented growth at the expense of workers and the planet, and ignoring the problems of the lesser fortunate. In that case, we are actively destroying the, quote, West, and we will continue to do so until it's an LGBTQ plus polygamous state, safe zone, with goals and dreams crushing profit-oriented minds, religion becoming completely personal and diverse from secular to theist, a society of true freedom that values that values life over property. And I hope you watch in horror every second as we dismantle something outdated. And
I admit that was said slightly inflammatorily.
I'm very inflammatory when I, as you notice, I'm much more gentle in real life.
It grabs attention, and that's what you try to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, hold on a second. So, let's see. Where should we start here? Okay, let's start with the beginning here. It said,
sure.
Just for the Secular Student Alliance for their statement under the picture itself. You know what? Here, let me see if I can share this screen, and it might be easier for people watching. I'm not really good at this. Let's see. A sec here.
Sorry, my camera can't focus for some reason.
I think this is the one I want. Yeah, this is it. Okay, so here on the right here, it says, make your voice heard, vote for your secular values, vote like your rights depend on it, because they do. What from your perspective, what do you mean, if you would agree with that, what do you mean by your rights that depend upon them?
So the way that they put it, of course, I'm sure that they have a different description of how they meant their words. When I look at secular values and vote like your rights depend on it, I do see that there are a lot of underprivileged groups of people and identities which are threatened by a lot of the things that go on in higher politics, such as the current election that's going on right now. I don't know if you see it this way, but I certainly see the current election as a lose-lose situation where there's a lot of issues going on that we should definitely have our eyes on. And I know that there are a lot of people who are close to me who identify as different things that would be considered probably in danger, who are worried that the election cycle could bring about the end of their ability to openly identify as certain things. Whether or not that idea is completely founded, or whether or not they're acting on completely rational ways of thinking about that, whether or not that's true, they're definitely scared, and so I definitely feel for them.
Okay, that's not really what I'm not really addressing that. I'm asking it from your atheist perspective. What do you mean by human rights?
Oh, by human rights.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very so. Is there any way that you could clarify a little bit more? So just describe human rights from an atheist perspective.
Yeah.
Okay. Human rights are rights that we believe humanity should have, both based on what we believe we should have, and seeing other human beings as empathetically as equals to ourselves, which some people do not do.
So you think that? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I was finished.
Okay. So you believe that humanity is intrinsically valuable then?
So I actually know this argument because I watched a few of your videos with a few other people, and I was actually hoping that it would come up today because I thought I had some pretty interesting things to say about it. Do I think humans are intrinsically valuable? I think that objectively the universe there's no value. I think that the universe itself, if there is a consciousness that comes from it, does not have any idea of value. But
are you part of the universe?
Yeah, I am a part of the universe.
Do you have value? Do you value things?
I think the universe itself does not value me, but I value things.
Okay, but you're part of the universe.
I am.
So the universe values.
That's a very interesting way to look at it. But here's the other thing. If I value something and you value that thing differently, then the universe itself does not have an objective rule of value. Rather, it has a chaos of value. So therefore, it has no value at all. It's still subjective. If you can look at a piece of something and see something different from two different perspectives, it has to be subjective. I personally don't believe in objective value where one thing is seen by all to have value, but rather there are different values placed on things from different points of the universe, as we are just the universe observing itself.
Okay, so there's no such thing as objective value then?
I'm sorry, what was that?
There's no such thing as objective value. In other words, you said that everybody who
I don't believe so.
Things, they don't value it for reason. It's for no reason.
So they value it for a subjective reason, not an objective.
Yeah, but is that subjective reason reasonable? In other words, you're saying everybody just reasons willy-nilly for no different. Is there any difference between your valuing things and Hitler's valuing things?
No, there's not. A single human being.
So you don't have a problem with the Jews being gassed?
I do. I do have a problem with that.
Do you have a reason for that?
Mm-hmm. So I subjectively value the life of other human beings, which some people do not. Hitler did not.
But that's not a reasonable answer. I'm asking you, can you give me you said that human beings are not valuable, but you value them. That's kind of irrational. Can you give me a reason?
So I said human beings are not objectively valuable. Right. Which means I don't believe that there is some overarching rule of the universe that says that humanity is valuable. But I believe subjectivity to be the only thing that really exists. Objectivity is sort of a human construct. Nothing is
subjectivity is irrational. You just admitted that.
I'm sorry, my subjectivity is irrational? I don't believe I said that.
Well, you just said that humans are not valuable but you value them anyway for a reason that makes no sense.
Well, that's because I believe so objectivity has no value, but I also believe objectivity doesn't exist. It's a zero in the mathematical equation of the universe.
So nothing exists objectively.
So I take it out. So subjectively is the only thing that does exist. And so therefore value derived subjectively is important as it is derived subjectively, such as if Hitler did not believe the lives of the Jews mattered, he probably didn't even see them as human lives. He saw them as something closer to animalistic. So I see that as morally reprehensible. Humans are better than animals? Well, I guess that is also subjective. We're dealing right now with a lot of questions that are trying to pull objective answers. But I don't believe in objectivity, so I'm not going to be able to give you an objective answer. I'm going to be able to give you a subjective answer, but I can't speak for other people. Okay. If a society fully... I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Jonathan, do you have the right to impose your values upon others?
Absolutely not.
Do you believe in passing laws to tell other people what they should do?
I believe that there is a difference between personal and social morality, and that in the whole construct of things, right now, it's not a perfect system to pass laws in order to keep the peace.
So we shouldn't have
a perfect world. So that's not true. However, I do believe that we should have laws in a way that is the least intrusive to people's subjective experience of the world.
Oh, so you do believe in imposing your views upon others through law?
No, I don't.
You don't believe we should have jails, we shouldn't have justices, we shouldn't have police?
I believe, right, that humans as a group, a social group, should be able to create things that are generally agreed upon. Are you familiar with the idea of super precedents in the judicial branch of the government?
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. A super precedent is something that most people... I'm sorry, what was that?
It's probably something you learned this week, huh?
It came up during the confirmation hearings for Amy Comey Barrett. I knew about it beforehand, but I did expand upon it this week by watching the confirmation hearings, which have been very interesting, by the way, gone completely different than I thought they were going to go. So when it comes to, I'm sorry, I lost my whole train of thought with the whole Amy Comey Barrett thing.
As super moral law. So you're basically trying to promote conventionalism, basically that right and wrong is what's determined by the masses.
In a way, right and wrong for a societal level is determined by that society.
Right.
So if you don't act within the society, if you act off the grid, your subjective morality should work more closer to where you are. But if you participate in society, you then have to follow a society morality in a doctrine of societal understanding and ethics in order to participate in that group of people. But I do think it should be, you should be able to withdraw from social conduct. I don't believe that people who want to go off the grid should be forced under law to remain within the grid of a nation. I believe that they should be able to contract their own private areas to be in order to operate completely subjectively. But if you want to benefit from society, you then also have to participate in society's expectations.
Okay. Would you agree that in all the scenario that you have described, and where there's a kind of moral imperative as the herd or as the societal group, that you are presupposing that those in the group should value existence as though it is the goal of the moral code?
Let me try to break that down a little bit to make sure that I understood. If you're in a group, you have could you say that again? I'm not sure I got that all.
You're basically saying everything that you said right now. You're saying people should be able to work together so that they can promote. This is the term I was used. They promote the sanctity of existence. Okay, so the herd that is coming up with this moral code. How are we going to live our lives? You're always going to presuppose that there is a moral code or a goal that we should move toward, and that is that we should try to extend the life and extend the happiness of the greatest number of people within the group in order to survive.
So I think that in the beginning, right, when we were more of a tribal species, there were many groups who would place value on things very differently. And the group that survived is the group that valued themselves and the world around them. So most of our societies are built around having a value on existence and the continuation of existence. And those small groups eventually grew to be large nations and large social groups and contracts of that sort. However, I don't believe that that I should dictate another group's values in the universe. So therefore, if a group wants to exist that does not value their existence and does not value the continuation of their existence, say the Quakers had a rule in which you could not procreate, and therefore they died out quite quickly.
That was the Shakers.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you for the clarification. The Shakers, not the Quakers. The Shakers. And they died out over a period of time. They valued their existence quite heavily, but they didn't value the continuation of their existence in any reasonable way where they could continue to exist in the way that they did.
So you think
I don't believe that was wrong. I'm sorry, what was that?
So you think the Nazis should have been left alone because they wanted to live differently than everybody else?
Well, they began taking a social contract and pushing it on other groups. If the Nazis didn't then take their understanding and impose that upon the Jewish population, and which ended up with ultimately their termination, then the Nazis could have been left alone. If they wanted to build a society that was far right, and the people in that society all agreed that that's how they wanted to live, and they weren't imposing that on another group of people, then that would be fine. But their entire ideology was built around culling and changing the entire social group of humanity. If they won in a terrible world situation, their morality would have spread across multiple nations until that was the group morality. And they would have convinced everybody that the now extinct Jewish population in that scenario were evil. And if everybody believed that, then that was their group morality, and we would have all been dead to not even disagree with it. Okay, and if that's how the world went, then that would have been how the group morality would have went, as much as I dislike that personally.
Okay, so every law persecutes some person. Would you agree with that?
Would you say similar to the libertarian idea of taxation is always held at gunpoint for a human being? Something like that is what you're talking about.
Yeah, a speed limit persecutes people who want to drive fast. Laws against pedophilia persecute people who want to have intergenerational relations. Taxation persecutes people who don't want to pay taxes. Every single law persecutes somebody. So you had this arbitrary judgment against the Nazis that they wanted to kill the Jews. Why that arbitrary? And then you're not arbitrarily being against those who want to speed.
Well, we can start about the whole idea of speeding, and we'll start there. A road wasn't built by you, and a car wasn't built by you. You benefited off of society and the invention of cars and the invention of commerce, and then you purchased your car, and you went over roads that were used to pay taxes. And so therefore, in that situation, since you're benefiting from a societal development, you then have to participate in the societal morality where they know if you take their advancement, because we didn't invent any of those things, if you take their advancement and then use it in a reckless way that then kills somebody else using that advancement, then the group is in some ways responsible. So therefore, the group needs to put a group morality law on that situation, which people might not completely agree with, but the perfect situation is to get it where the group mostly agrees with it. And if you don't want to be part of that group, then therefore you can't benefit from their advancements, such as cars or roads. You would have to make your own car and make your own road.
You need to treat others like they would like to be treated. That's
subjectively, or you can leave, because if you don't value that
standard you just put.
It wasn't at all objective, because you have the option to leave, and social groups set their own rules subjectively. Well, then you'll have to adhere to social morality.
Yeah. So you're saying that there is this unspoken or just assumed law called the golden rule that you need to treat others like you would like to be treated toward the sanctity of existence, and if somebody breaks that, they should be persecuted, and that's an objective standard.
It might be considered assumed as a law now because it's been around for so long, and it is important for human existence to continue to value other people.
It's not
objective.
But you're not doing it for a reason.
I have an a subjective reason for wanting the life of others to continue, such as my wife. I want my wife to continue because it makes me happy. I want my wife to continue because I believe that makes her happy.
Okay, but what if somebody likes to kill people and it makes them happy?
Then they are imposing themselves on another person.
Yes, but you're imposing upon the person who disagrees with you.
If somebody wants to kill somebody and that person wants to die, then there's no logical issue there.
Okay, so you're saying there's nothing objective, and yet except there's an objective standard of the golden rule.
I do not believe in an objective standard of the golden rule.
Okay, well,
perhaps I'm not explaining myself well enough with an idea of the golden rule. That rule isn't golden. It is just another rule, but it's been such a popular rule among social groups that it might seem objective, like most things that we consider to be objective.
Okay, again, you're assuming the golden rule promotes the standard of the sanctity of existence. You're saying that there's this unspoken rule that we are supposed to live for some reason or not. You don't have a reason for that, but you have this feeling. Would it be fair to say that you have a feeling inside of you that tells you you should exist?
Yes. I believe that's human biology.
All right, would that be called a determination?
Describe determination or define.
Were you determined to value life?
Such as fate, predetermination?
Yeah, were you programmed to be a value existence? In other words, if you saw somebody who didn't value existence, say, for example, you have a friend who struggled with suicide because their bacon wasn't cooked well or something like that, would you just say, go ahead and kill yourself, or would you try to help them to not take their life?
I would try to help them for the reason of if I can coerce them or allow them to realize on their own that they do value existence, then that would be better. But I know if they truly don't value existence, then nothing I'm saying is going to work. And so therefore they will do what they want.
That they are broken.
That they are broken?
Yes, that they're wanting to kill themselves. There's something wrong with them. They want to kill themselves because their bacon is not cooked properly.
Because their bacon is not cooked properly. I would see that as ludicrous on my end because I don't operate that way.
But you would say, generally speaking, that person has a pathology, right?
I cannot. I would say that they are definitely acting outside of human biology.
Okay, so human biology is determined toward a certain way that is normal. And when somebody deviates from that, you say they're broken and they need to be fixed.
So the way that living things work is they cannot continue to pass on their genes if they don't value their own existence. So when life first started being formed, let's say there were two types of life, one that didn't value its existence and one that did. That one that didn't value its existence did not pass on its genes. So we are the result of the organism that did value its existence, and so therefore that is slightly programmed into our person. But in that way, that's just how life works. It doesn't make it objective. It just means that humanity evolved in a way that they have a value for their own life because it was mechanically necessary for the item to continue to move.
So mechanics is the goal of existence?
No, I don't think so. There's no objective goal, in my opinion. There's a subjective goal. If I say that the goal of existence is to be married, and I marry, I've met the goal of existence because it's what I place as the goal for myself, and it's what you place as the goal for yourself, in my opinion.
Yes, but if somebody doesn't have a goal that leads to the sanctity of existence, you say that there's something wrong with them because they're not acting according to their biological determination properly, right? But
I'm also, if you're familiar with the term of transhumanism, I believe I take it in two different ways. One, the conventional way in which technology can allow humans to transcend certain biological things, but also in the idea that certain levels of consciousness and awareness of yourself allow you to transcend your own biology and programming from that end. There's a lot of people who can change their heart rate just by changing their way of thinking. You can actively go against your biology and still not be broken, because human consciousness is a vastly unexplored and deeply complicated thing, where if you're a conscious being, you may be able to work against things that were animalistically programmed into you, such as your animal brain. There are humans that choose to fast. And if you choose to fast, even though you're biologically programmed to want food and energy, you can still do it. You can act against that and you can fast. And there are some people who have fasted until they died due to the fact that they wanted to do that. There were Buddhist monks who would eat nothing but nuts and then mummify themselves in Tibet. And they would act completely against their own personal biology in order to achieve what they saw as spiritual transcendence. So you can act against your biology and not be broken. So somebody acting against their biology of wanting to continue existence isn't necessarily broken, but I would fear for them because I personally wish for humans to go on. So my subjective morality in that case affects how I would treat that person, but I can't push it on them.
Okay, but you say that we should be we are determined toward existence, and yet you say if someone goes against that determination, there's not necessarily a problem with it. My question to you is, how do you justify the determination for your value in existence? Because only persons value things. Mm-hmm. What determines you indeterminately to determine you toward determination of existence?
The fun thing about subjectivity is that I don't need any massive reason. I don't need any overarching goal or anything like that, something massive. My subjective goal in life could be as simple as eating a pecan on every third Thursday of a month, right? And if I do that for the rest of my life, I've achieved my goal, and therefore I'm happy. And why would I be moved towards that goal? It could simply be emotional. If I value emotions in a way where that brings me to my goal and it makes me happy to do that, and happiness is my goal, then that's good. Sadness could be my goal, or no emotions at all. My goal could be entirely mechanical. It could be to find out why quarks act the way that they do in the center of a neutron star. It could be scientific. It could be religious. If I want to look through religious texts and find meaning in them, or if I want to believe in a God subjectively, I think that also that could be my goal if I want to preach the name of that God. Any of those things are completely valid goals, and any reason you have for moving towards those goals are completely valid because it's all subjective. It doesn't need, consciousness isn't like science. It doesn't need a cause and effect sort of situation.
Okay, are you familiar with the principle of proportionate causality?
Could you give me a rundown?
Okay, it basically says that something cannot impart a quality to something else in a causal relationship that the one that is causing the actuality in another, it has to have that property in and of itself. In other words, you can't have, for example, rocks giving rise to philosophical societies, because rocks do not have the property of consciousness. Now, if you are saying that you yourself are a conscious being that has teleology, that has purpose, this is my first thing. I was saying the universe is purposeful, even though if you just say overall it's not, well, you can't say that because part of the universe is personal, therefore the universe is personal. How do you justify that purpose, that teleology, that determination indeterminately? How can indetermination determine things into existence that are determinative?
So, you're saying that a rock can't give way to a philosophical society because it doesn't have consciousness. Are you asking how the universe exists without?
I'm asking you how you need to be a type of person to be a determinative individual indeterminately. because indetermination.
How my consciousness came from an indifferent universe, basically.
Say it again.
I'm sorry, I am just trying, how my consciousness might have arisen, or society itself might have arisen from what was previously not a conscious universe.
Yes. How does because there's no purpose in the existence. So just imagine the entire universe. Let's say a whole set. Let's take a circle, a Venn diagram circle. Say, okay, the entire set of the universe is unintentional. Okay, how does that unintentionality intend intentionality into being when it is unintentional by definition? It's a violation of the law of identity. Unintentionality is not intentional by definition.
One of the most interesting things about the universe is and how it relates to the question that you're asking too, is how did the universe begin when before there was nothing, there was no cause to cause its effect and how it exists.
You can't have an effect without a cause. That's analytically true.
Which means there probably was one that I don't know.
Well, probably there was.
Most people don't know.
I'm sorry.
Well, that's the thing. You have to say probably, and the reason why you have to say probably is because cause and effect is a human theory, just like gravity, which means it could be proved wrong in the future.
No, man did not make up causality. Man discovered causality. It's like Christopher Columbus did not make America; he discovered it.
He didn't discover it either. That's a totally different topic, though. But when it comes to I'm a little bit confused now by that.
I'm saying that gravity existed, and we determined. We didn't make gravity. Gravity existed, and we discovered it. We didn't make it. And what was the other thing we were talking about? Determination.
Cause and effect, and how the universe.
The principle of causality.
Yeah,
it's not something that we made up out of whole cloth. It's something that we discovered. And we put words, we codified it. Aristotle was very good at breaking up causality and to make it. But he didn't make it. He discovered it and put jargon to it to allow us to be able to understand it better.
That's what I'm talking about. Is about putting jargon to it.
But our words are not the principle itself. Our words are descriptive.
I understand. Yeah, I'm not equating the two, but our words that we put to it could be imperfect. And it's happened before, where we observe a phenomenon that we know is happening, and we describe it in a way that works for hundreds of years, and then 101 years comes up, and it's no longer valid. Certain equations that we've been using forever break down at the center of a black hole, and we're looking for new equations to observe those areas of the universe. Things like dark matter could change our complete understanding of the universe. So what I'm trying to say is our understanding and how we have observed cause and effect is valid to a point, but it could change. Anything in science could change.
Yes, but you need to have a reason for it. You just can't willy-nilly and throw it off without something to replace it. You know what I'm saying? That's Occam's razor. You're violating the principle of parsimony. You're saying, well, it could be wrong. I don't know why or how it could, but who knows? There could be, the moon could be made out of cheese if we just looked at it the right way, but I can't demonstrate it. But who knows? Maybe it is. Well, that's
you're right.
Occam's razor. All right. So you've got to give a reason to be able to doubt something. And so if you're going to question causality, you have to somehow demonstrate how something can be and not be at the same time, the same relationship. For an effect to create itself, it would need to exist and not exist at the same time in the same relationship, which is a violation of the law of non-contradiction.
But I did answer that a few minutes ago when I said that I don't know. I don't know.
In other words, when I have a thesis right here and I say, I have this all the time with atheists. I have a thesis right here. And then you say, well, I don't agree with your thesis. And I'm just going to say, I don't know. All you've done is just conceded the argument. You just lost.
But I'm not claiming to know how life got here.
I am. You need to demonstrate me to be wrong. Or
no, actually,
I give up.
If you're making the claim, you have to demonstrate. I'm claiming nothing.
And you can't rebut it. That's the point.
Well, I'm sorry. How did life begin to you? Because I don't remember you saying so.
Well, life cannot begin. Consciousness cannot begin unless there is something that is, let me put it on a level of being. There cannot be dependent being existing independently. Okay, everything that changes is dependent by definition, because when something changes, you've got something that has the quality of actually being, and then you've got this other thing that is potentially so. And so this thing that just actually acts upon the potential one, actualizing it in this one. So here you've got two actualized beings. And so you cannot have an infinite regress of potentiality, which would be effects, without a cause. There must be something somewhere that has the quality of self-existence. Otherwise, dependent existence could not be, according to the law of identity again. Dependent existence is not independent by definition. And that's what changes. Anything that changes is dependent.
So I understand. And I see where you're going. But so let me put forth a theory which I cannot substantiate, but I think you'll see where I'm going with it. So the universe, when I described to you what I believe a God is, I said that the universe, in its transfer of information, is likely to be a consciousness in which we cannot fathom, right? So that consciousness in itself could have manifested in the way that it did, and which means that at all points, everything that we see in the world had that conscious existence. I personally, in my life, I do believe that when we're talking about consciousness and living things, it all has to do with the physical transfer of information in your brain. Your neurons fire. Different things are transferred from one area to the other, and that creates different sensations that we interpret. A rock is a living thing in some aspects, in which it has atoms that are stagnant, but when information is transferred to that rock, say you hit that rock with another rock, it's going to chip, it's going to change in some way, and it's going to perceive, even though that isn't how we perceive with our eyes, our ears, our noses, and our senses, and our pain. They perceive in a way by changing their form, but they're not conscious beings. However, the whole way that this all works, where information is the thing that determines consciousness, and the universe being a higher consciousness than us, and the planet Earth being a higher consciousness than us, but being indifferent because it doesn't operate the same as we do, it could easily give an answer for why life began to exist, because of the complexity of the transfer of information above us that is even more complex than the human brain.
Okay, so you're competing two ontologies of existence.
I'm sorry, say again. Conceding to the ontology of
there are two ontologies of existence. There is this universe that is separate from our existence that gives us the things that we have.
No, I'm a bit confused again by that. Yeah, if you could clarify a little bit.
You said that the universe has this level of consciousness that it transfers to us. Is that what you were saying?
I would say, so I use the word manifest, but we don't know if it's consciously doing that. Giving is an interesting word to use. It could simply just be the way that it exists.
But remember the principle of proportionate causality. Something cannot impart to something else what it itself does not have. If it's non-conscious, how does it give us consciousness?
It likely has a consciousness far above ourselves, but may not be a self-aware consciousness.
And it is distinct from us. This is what I'm saying. So you're saying there are two ontologies, two ontoses being. There are two types of beings in the universe. There's the higher level of cosmic being or whatever that gives rise to our lower level of cosmic being. Is that what you're saying?
But we can't claim to understand it like that. We can't even claim to understand it as a being. It may not operate as a being. Either there's
being or there's non-being, and non-being is nothing.
I don't believe in such a thing as non-being. I don't think that we're any more special than a rock. I think that a rock has a transfer of information. I think that we have a more complex transfer of information. A house has a transfer of information, which means it has a certain level of consciousness in which is far below us. Ant colonies have a large amount of transfer of information, and which shows a non-self-aware consciousness of itself. and humans are just somewhere on that spectrum. I don't think you can go. I don't think there is a duality. I think it's a mono. I forget the name of that. Mono. There's one thing. One.
Monism.
I'm sorry. What was that?
Monism. So we're God.
We are both a piece. We're a subsection.
Okay. So all of reality is dependent in its existence because we're dependent. Our ontology is not self-existing. You were born, you're going to die, you're going to go away. Your being is, all of existence is dependent existence independently.
I'm still a bit confused by that. The way that we exist in the universe, the way that all things exist in the universe.
Everything cannot be changed. That which changes is dependent in its existence by definition. And you're saying that all of the whole of all the existence is pure change. Have you familiar with Heraclitus and Parmenides, the pre-Socratics?
Not intimately.
Okay, Heraclitus and Parmenides were some of the earliest, pre-Socratic philosophers, and they had a controversy between ultimate reality and being itself. And Heraclitus said everything is changing at all times, and nothing is static. And Parmenides said, well, let me give an example that Heraclitus gave. He says, when you put your foot into the water, and then you take your foot out and you put your foot back in, it's not the same river because it's changing. Not only is the river changing, but you are changing. And so everything is a complete static and in flux. Parmenides said, no, he disagreed, and he denied the reality of change. And he said, whatever is, is. That was his maxim. That means that if there is such a thing as being, then the only thing other than being is non-being, and therefore change is an illusion. And this is the greatest question of Western philosophy, it's something that Plato, Socrates was trying to work out, Plato tried to work out, and then Aristotle worked on him, and it's been the greatest question. And even to this day, it's still a conundrum to us. But the problem with Heraclitus and saying that everything is pure change, if everything is pure change, then that means that everything is purely nothing. There's no continuity of being. But we all know that there's a continuity of being, even though that I myself have change. I'm losing my hair and my beard gets longer and all these things change in me. I know there's still continuity of trayness within me. And so you can't say that everything is purely change at all time, because if everything is purely potential, I kind of alluded to this earlier, then it's really nothing. Okay, you've got to have some kind of being, of continuity of being for there to be. And so you can't say that the entire universe is pure change, because then the entire universe is pure nothingness. It's pure happening. It's pure dependency independently. It's utterly irrational. You've got to have both types of being in the universe. You've got to have something that is unchanging, that gives rise to something that is changing and dependent. So you've got to have independence giving rise to dependence. And if it were not for the agency or the power of the independent, the dependent would cease to be.
So when you look at, are you familiar with string theory?
A little bit.
Okay. In string theory, they lay out how the dimensions, and it gets a little bit fuzzy above 6, but how the dimensions of the universe work, the fundamentals of its existence. There's the ones that everybody knows about. There's the line, then there's width, and then there's height. So that's the third dimension, just moving around. The dimension above that one being time or duration. And the way that they describe that to work is that while we see time as moving through it, say you are a 2-dimensional person and you see a 3-dimensional person and you see them in 2-dimensional subsections. We see time in subsections, but time always exists at, like, always. So there is no change, come to say, but we are seeing time in subsections.
Well, time is the measurement of change.
Time is actually like a scientifically measurable thing, like distance. Time, the way that they're looking for like space travel and things right now is they're looking at folding those dimensional layers in the idea of string theory using string field theory, which is the equation that was come up by Professor Michio Kaku at the University of New York. They are looking at folding those layers into each other right now in Geneva, Switzerland, in order to travel through large spaces at any given time very quickly. And the reason why they can do that is because time is an actual dimension of existence in which we move it through it in subsections. So time isn't really just a measurement of change because time is always there. We're just viewing what is there in subsections.
Time is not always there because time is measured by the only way that we can understand time is by looking at contingent matter moving in relation to itself. That's how we measure. We look at whether it's planetary or we look at atomic movement. That's how we measure time. And so it cannot be time cannot be eternal because matter is always changing. That which is changing cannot be eternal by definition.
But it's not changing. We're seeing it in subsections. So matter that changes. I'm sorry, what was that?
We measure time by observing change in contingent matter.
That's true because we can see how fast the subsections are moving, how many subsections we're seeing per hour moment. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't already exist above there. If we existed in a fourth dimensional way instead of a three-dimensional way, we weren't just seeing subsections of time, but we were seeing many, like all of time at one given time. We would see all things in all states that it could be. It's just not something we can fathom. It's not a conscious situation we can really truly understand how it would be to exist that way. But when I talk about things like the universe and how its consciousness would work, it probably is conscious on all those levels in a way that we just do not understand. If you were to see yourself in the fourth dimension, just the atoms that make up your body, you would see this long snake-like thing from birth to end, which would continue because your particles are replaced in your body every 7 years. So those would split off as they split off and go through their own timelines. But you move through time, and that exists at all times. But we can see the three-dimensional subsections of how time is working at any given moment. Hopefully, I'm explaining myself correct in an understandable way.
Yeah, but it doesn't really address what we're talking about though at all. I'm talking about the necessity. If there is change, there must be something unchanging that gives ontological status to that which changes.
But I'm claiming that the universe, or I'm insinuating one way that the universe could be, because I can't claim it objectively, as we've already discussed. The universe is a single thing that is always existed in the same form that it has always existed.
So you and I are the same thing.
You and I are. When you say the same thing, you mean like part of the singular, the universe.
We're not really talking to each other. Everything is just one. There are no parts to it. It's simple, is what you're saying. And simplicity cannot have interaction within itself. A monad cannot have relationality. The perspective, you've got to have more than one person to have relationality, and we are not the same person.
But we can't fathom how the universe operates in its oneness.
Okay, well now you're just saying I just don't know again. But I'm saying I'm giving a thesis, and you either need to rebut it or to concede.
But
saying I don't know is not an answer.
No, I'm not saying that I don't know. Before I was saying that I don't know about how life might have existed, like the intricacies of how exactly time unfolded in the way that it did to it result in me, because that's such a vast subject that we just don't have the answers on at the moment. But when it comes to the claims that you're making, where one thing cannot give birth to another thing that is of more complexity than itself, it didn't. The one thing that does exist is of ultimate complexity and all of its internals, which are one piece.
No, ultimate reality must be simple. If it's complex, then it needs an assembler itself.
But infinity is simple. It's just complicated to us.
And that's just saying, green garage doors 34 Maxim. I mean, just saying that doesn't mean anything. I mean, just saying infinity, what in the world is infinity? I'm saying with ultimate reality, the ultimate ontological status must be simple. If it's made up of parts, if it's complex, it has to have something to actualize it with the parts together. In other words, you can't have, then itself is not ultimate by definition. Ultimate reality must be one. It must be simple in its being. That's Platonic Neoplatonism, which I think is pretty good in a lot of ways.
Ultimate reality must be simple within its being.
Yeah, because if it's complex, it requires an assembler to bring it to the being that it has. The parts had to be assembled to make it what it is, but it wasn't what it was until it was assembled. And so there's something outside of it had to assemble it to bring it to the being, to the position of being that it had. So
are you familiar? Are you familiar with the argument that I hear quite often, where if a tornado goes through a city and destroys the city, but on the other end of the tornado, it builds out of the city that it destroyed a brand new Lamborghini, that kind of creation can't come from such chaos? Are you familiar with that argument? Is that similar to the argument that you're making as well?
No,
I don't want to paraphrase you. Okay.
It has nothing to do with it. I'm not saying, because you're speaking of a scenario of complexity coming through with complexity making complexity. I'm saying you can't have that. In other words, yours is way down the line. I was talking at the ultimate reality in a hierarchical level, not necessarily even with time. You got to have something that is simple, that gives definition and gives rise to the complex, because complexity requires assemblage. It has to be assembled. So if you're going to say the ultimate reality is complex, it's irrational, because it needed something greater than that to put it together. By definition, you can't have complexity being ultimate. You can only have simplicity. The one, it's got to be unified.
I think maybe where our disconnect here is how we're understanding how each other defines the words we're using. Because when I think I might be using complex and simple in a different way than you are. Could you define simple and complex for me?
Yeah, simple is one. Complex is a conglomeration of more than one.
Mm-hmm. But would you consider yourself to be a one or a many?
No, because I'm not. I'm made of cells. I'm made of trillions of cells, and I have different parts. I have qualities about myself that are not one. I am a composite being, and I'm changing. Anything that changes is composite as well. It's not if it weren't composite and it changed, it would cease to be.
So the pieces of you create you.
No, I can't create myself.
No, you can't create. But I'm saying your cells and your brain cells and your neurons and everything coming together is what you are.
I am a composite, yes, of many different things.
What I'm trying to say is that the universe is a composite of many different things, and we are those pieces.
Right. Did it compose itself before it was?
It could. Honestly, the universe at the moment, we're not completely sure that it didn't always exist. We have a theory for. I'm sorry, what was that?
If it always existed, it wouldn't change.
I'm not claiming change.
But weren't you born?
Yeah, but that timeline existed. That's what I'm trying to say with time. Time is just as stagnant as the third dimension, but the way that we see it in cross sections is what I'm trying to say. We're traveling through something that exists in cross sections, and we're a part of it at the same time.
Okay, well, Jonathan, I need to get going here. I just
okay,
like an hour or something like that. But I mean, I need to go home and eat. I
understand. My dinner came as we started, so it's cold now.
It's cold. Oh man, Sorry about
All
that.
right. No, it's not your fault. I was very excited for this, and I had a great time.
Well, it's good talking to you. Nice to meet you.
It was good talking to you.
Do it
Nice to meet
sometime.
you. Yeah, if you ever need to contact me, you know where to find me, and I'll be willing to come back.
All right. Sounds good, Jonathan. You have a good one.
All right.
All right.
Have a good one. I'll see you.